This video is sponsored by Pouch.
It had been broken down again and had to be recovered by the RSC with a ridiculously thick white smoke coming from the back of the car when she was doing 40 miles an hour in sixth gear. Handed that cash back, the three of them jumped in the car and drove off with his car and his cash. Hi guys, welcome back to Chops Garage, and at the moment what I'm doing is laying down some more lacquer on the Acadian van. You called it 2CV van, it's the Acadian van, isn't it? So as you know, I've just been scuffing this and just laying down lacquer as and when I've got some spare from other jobs. So I had a bit of the lacquer left over and managed to use up about half the can to do this section here. Now, but as I always tell you with paint jobs, you got to know when to leave it well enough alone. I want to come back and do a little bit more. I want to do a second coat on it. I've got a little bit more left in another can. So I want to wait a good 10 minutes before I do that. If I don't find myself something to do in between, I'll end up putting it on too quickly and wrecking it. So I thought it's probably a good time for Story Corner. Story Corner, of course, being a catch-up on all your private sale horror stories and a catch-up with the one that started it all off, the subscriber who sold the £650 Ford Focus. And we thought it was the end of that story, but it's not, and I can scarcely believe it's not. So yeah, let's get into it. Before we get into that, I must very quickly tell you about today's sponsor, Pouch. Pouch is a free desktop browser extension that automatically finds and applies the best discount codes when you're shopping online.
So check this out. I needed the service kit for the Skoda Yeti that still isn't finished, and got onto Eurocar Parts, gathered together all the bits that I needed for it, put them in my shopping cart, at which point Pouch automatically went out and found 8 discount codes. It then applied them to my cart for me and found me a saving of £60.81, 48% off. Pouch works with over 3,000 UK websites including Eurocar Parts, QuickFit and B&Q. Even if there are no live codes available at the time that you're shopping online, you can still earn points from participating retailers which can be redeemed for gift cards. Pouch only takes a couple of clicks to install, and make sure to pin it to your browser.
Get Pouch free right now by clicking the link in the top of this video's description. And I want to thank Pouch for being a continued sponsor of Chops Garage. This all started with our first story, which was our subscriber who sold a car privately. It was like 600 odd pounds, wasn't it? And the guy came and had a really good look over it. He was happy with it, took the car away, and then afterwards he started to get bombarded with messages telling him the car wasn't roadworthy. He'd ripped him off despite the fact the car had a brand new MOT. And you have to excuse a little bit of background noise because I've got the door open to let obviously the gases disperse as we do a bit of spraying. So yeah, so he told him that it was unroadworthy. He messaged and said he wanted all of his money back, and when our subscriber said no, understandably so, well, he actually said bring it back. The guy said no, it needs to go and get crushed, and bombarded him with messages saying that he had lawyers on standby, solicitors on standby, that he was going to take him to court. He already had a court date ready to go, and his solicitor cost a fortune, so he'd have to pay the fees for that as well. And then his wife messaged the subscriber saying, "This, my husband's really wealthy. He's got Teslas and Range Rovers, and he does this for fun." And basically bombarded our subscriber. And we covered this in a couple of previous videos, so if you haven't seen those, you might want to go back and watch them. But we thought it was all done and dusted, because the last time we spoke about this, the subscriber messaged him saying no more further contact unless it's in writing. I'll wait on your court details to come through, because he said he'd already put the court case in place. I'll wait for that to come through before we do anything. Well, I thought that was the end of it, but believe it or not, this story gets more bizarre. So the subscriber contacted me, the one who's given me that sign in the back and the one on the door here, so many thanks again for that. And it turns out that this guy's still been bombarding him with messages even after this. After telling them it was he voice recorded it when he came to look at the car, he then admitted that he hadn't done. He obviously came down to half the amount he wanted in the first place at one point. But then our subscriber said, yeah, no, I'm not having any of this, put it in writing. Well, apparently our servers continue to be bombarded with messages, but then, like I say, to get the story even more bizarre, the chap turned up on his driveway shouting the odds that he wanted to get his money back. So I asked a subscriber, out of interest, what did he turn up in? Now this is the man that's got the Range Rover and the Tesla. He turned up on a scooter. God's honest, the guy turned up on a scooter apparently. And again, he threw a lot of stuff about having mental health issues at our subscriber and all these kinds of things. Still hasn't turned back up with the car, interestingly enough. Still not actually turned up with the car. So despite wanting a refund for the car, he's never actually turned back up in the car. So in the end, our subscriber actually had to contact the police about this, and I'm pleased to say the police stepped in, have contacted him, and he hasn't heard anything since. And actually, a number of you have sent me stories, and I'm pleased to say that the police actually do take this quite seriously when people start bombarding and harassing people, and they are stepping in. So when I shared that story, I said, you know, if you've got your own stories about private sale nightmares and things like that, bung them across. And we shared some of them last time, and some of them very entertaining. And I'm pleased to say loads of you have sent some more in. So I thought I'd share some of the other ones with you as well. This next one from Mr. Big Van Life. This is a very common scam, and you need to be aware of this one. Be really careful if you're selling privately off the driveway. I've heard this one tons, and in fact, it happened last week to my neighbour who was selling that Audi A7. Luckily, he had wind of it and caught onto it early on. But this is a very common one, so do keep do be careful if this happens. So Mr. Big Van Life says, I was selling a Mercedes CLS off my drive, and it's normally prestige nice cars. 3 guys show up, test drive, lots of tyre kicking. He'd had the car for 3 years. It was 60,000 miles in really good nick, no problems with it at all. But parked next to it had his Tesla with the Sentry mode on it, and if he hadn't had this, he wouldn't have caught them out on this. So he was kept busy talking, and they went back to the car, and suddenly it was smoking. And one guy pointed out that there was oil in the coolant on the car, and made him a silly offer of 8k less than he had the car up for. Well, luckily our subscriber thought something was a bit strange there, smelt a rat, sent them packing, and reviewed the footage. And when he reviewed the footage from his Tesla, he could see that one guy squirted liquid up the exhaust, and the other one poured something into the coolant while he was distracted. And this is a very common scam. Unfortunately, it's more common than you'd like to believe, where they come mob-handed. A couple of them keep you busy while one of them faffs around with the car. And the same thing, let's say, happened with my neighbour with the Audi A7 the other day. 3 guys turned up, faffed around with his car. One of them keeping busy talking about properties, even trying to get him into the property, while the other 2 were looking at the car. But after a while, they were mucking him about so much, he just told them to leave. Which is, you know, obviously not easy when there's 3 people there. It's a bit intimidating, and that's what they rely on. So perhaps, you know, I would suggest that you have a rule that no more than 2 people come to visit your car at once. If more than 2 people turn up, don't deal with them, because more often than not, that is just the entire purpose of having that many people there is to pressurise you into doing something you don't want to do. Got one from Gee Cars here, so thanks for that. I had a guy try a crack with me. It was an old Fiat 127. I want to say Fiat 500, didn't I? I'm so used to it. It's an old Fiat 127. That's a cool car. Another Fiat 127 Sport. Those days are gone, I think. 3 months MOT, noisy wheel bearings. So it was sold spares or repair for £100. Oh my god, Fiat 127 for £100. The guy was happy. It goes away. 3 months later, he's on the phone saying the car's unroadworthy. He's been unable to use it because of the wheel bearing, and he hasn't used it. Like I say, he hasn't used it since he bought it. So he's coming back round to his house that night for his money back. 5 minutes later, our subscriber's on the phone talking to a mate, telling him what's happened. And he says, "Oh, isn't a little yellow Fiat 127?" He says, "Yes." He goes, "Well, that guy works next door to me. He's been using it every day to go to work and back." So the guy phones to say he's on his way round, that he'd better have the cash waiting. And our subscriber says, "You don't work at X, do you?" "Yeah." And he says, "Well, my mate works next door and just told me you've been driving it every day." Click, phone goes down, disappears off. So thanks to Stephen for another one. He sold a bloke a car. Must have been a while back. It was a Capri, I think. So it was. We're talking about £500. This must have been a good while back, because obviously Capris are worth silly money now, because Mike is trying to sell me one. "Stop it, Mike, I don't need any more toys." So he sold it 2 weeks later. He sold the car for around £500. 2 weeks later, he got a call asking for £450, the £500 back. he apparently had a report done on the vehicle and it was unroadworthy. So when our subscriber asked for the report, it arrived, but it was 3 days after the chap had actually called him. So he obviously didn't have the report at that time, and it only listed a leaking radiator and a couple of worn tyres as the faults on a £500 car. So he said that he said, I'll come out and inspect the car myself. Arrived at the house for £400 hand, and said his only option was to give him the keys and he'd give him the £400, and he'd keep £100 to cover the use that he'd had so far and for his time to go and pick it up. All of a sudden, the car was absolutely fine. He didn't need the money out of him. It was only going to cost £80 to do the fix. And a lot of the time, offering the money back does actually make these things go away, because most of the time, from what we can see with these, it's not people actually wanting to give the car back. They want a huge discount on the car and think that if they ring up and bully people, they're going to get it. So you've got another example here, one from Andrew. Andrew, thanks for sending this one. Sold a perfect Volvo 940 SE in 2016. It was a 97, but it was the cleanest one he'd ever seen. It was absolutely immaculate. It'd been really well looked after by wealthy owners previously. He says to say it was better than new was no exaggeration. So sounds like it was an absolute minter. So he sold it to a chap, but then the guy immediately, as soon as he took the car away, started to complain. He said that the tyres that our subscriber had fitted 6 months earlier were old stock and not safe. He said the suspension was bad, and that the receipt that he'd given him as part of the sale of the car to show that blisters had been put on it wasn't true, or they Bilsteins, I don't know, blisters or Bilsteins. Then he tried to say the gearbox was faulty, just made loads and loads of complaints, and same theme as all of these, started to ask for a load of money back. So our subscriber again did the right thing, offered to buy the car back off him, but suddenly the guy didn't actually want to do that. And as our subscriber says, a lot of time people think they're just going to complain and get money back. I think one of my favourites isn't car related. Thanks to Steve for this one. This one's absolutely classic. So he was selling electrical equipment, sold a TV brand new, and a few months later the purchaser called and claimed, get this, it had caused the death of his prized cat through radiation. Apparently his cat had laid by the telly and this had killed the cat. Absolutely brilliant. Unbeknown to him, he had a solicitor friend who had contacts in court, and a quick search showed this guy actually was continuously putting claims in. And you do get people like this for all sorts of things: holidays, restaurants, purchases for any kind of purchase. In fact, there was one at that very time he was pursuing with Sainsbury's for a pair of trousers that were apparently torn. And I don't think there is some shared database, but I really think there should be some kind of shared database that is available to see if these people have done these kind of claims before, because a genuine person in their lifetime is very rarely going to have to do these claims. If someone's doing it all the time, they clearly are a bit dodgy. So this one is from Joshua. This is more of a first flip horror story. Bought a 2007 Renault Megane with a 1.5 diesel engine. He bought it from a guy that said he'd done an extensive rebuild of the head and the turbo, and he wasn't using it anymore, so he bought the car cheap for him, did a few bits and bobs of it. First attempt to flip a car for profit, so he stuck 12 months MOT on it and listed it for sale for $995, so cheap car. Lady came along and bought it. 15 minutes after she'd pulled away, he got a call to say that she'd broken down, was being recovered by the RAC. So he said he'd pop over to her address and check the car out. Got his code reader out, and it came back as a glow plug. But the woman said there was white smoke when the car broke down. So he did basic checks, coolant, oil level, took the car for a drive, and it all seemed fine, no problems. So he ordered up the glow plug and said he'd pop back and fit it when it arrived. Next day he gets another phone call saying it had been broken down again and had to be recovered by the RSC, with ridiculously thick white smoke coming from the back of the car when she was doing 40 mile an hour in 6th gear. 40 mile an hour in 6th gear. The gearing on the car meant that to be doing 40 mile an hour in 6th gear, the revs would have to be below 1,000 RPM. So she mentioned that there was this smoke. So it was clearly something that was being caused by the way she drives. Like I say, when you sell all the cars, they can be mechanically sound, but you don't know what people do with them after they leave you. But she denied that completely. So he said, absolutely don't drive it, wait until I come around and check it again. Or for a third time in a row, he got a call to say it had been broken down again. So she continued to drive it regardless of him saying to leave it alone. And this time there was no smoke, but the engine sounded bad. There was no power. When he got to have a look at the car, there was no oil in it, which leads him to believe that he thinks that she may well have had it drained off so she'd get rid of it. So he had no option other than take the car back. She tried to get back off him all the money for the breakdown recoveries as well, which she aren't actually obliged to give. And in the end, he scrapped it for 60 quid and never flipped a car again. So yeah, bad luck on that one, mate. That's the way that it can go sometimes. But like I say, you know, people could do anything to these cars once they're gone. If they want rid of them within the warranty period or within the return period, all they have to do is, you know, drive it in first gear at stupid speeds, drop the oil out of it, whatever, and they can just claim that the problem already existed. They'll be very hard to prove that they did it. Got another one here from John Hales. Thanks to this, John. He sold a Mitsubishi Evo to a guy who was apparently a master mechanic, according to him. He test drove it, loved it. 3 days later, messaged our subscriber and said that the engine had blown up and was pouring oil out, and he'd had to scrap it, so he wanted money back. But luckily, John's nephew spotted the car up for sale on an Evo forum, saying it was mint and one of the best looked after ones available, and was up for sale for 17 grand. So John actually sent the guy a copy of the ad to put that to bed. Paul Roberts sold a car as spares and repair for £100, so just absolute peanuts. He told the buyer, a father and son team, that would need work including welding, but the chap's father proceeded to tell him how good they were at repairing cars, so it wasn't a problem at all. But 2 weeks later, he had their mother on the phone crying as they just had to spend £200 on parts to service and valet it. And now it failed its MOT and needed welding. They couldn't afford the repairs, so he started to actually get phone threats from them. So he agreed to refund. Yeah, I guess for £100 it's not worth the hassle. So welded the car up, fitted new ball joints, and sold it on for 500 quid. So good ending for him there. Fair play to him taking the car back. Many wouldn't have done. Very common theme, isn't it? People leave happy with the car, check it over, negotiate a price, and then suddenly they have a problem that comes out of nowhere, and yeah, and then want money back. Don't want to bring the car back, but want money back, don't they? So we got another one here from Ingram Cars. Thanks for giving us this one. A few years back, a friend sold a car to someone who arrived to collect it with 3 other guys. They took it for test drive, did all the paperwork. The buyer paid $4,500 in cash, but after checking, the seller noticed it was £40 short. So the buyer said, I've checked that money 3 times, it's totally correct, give it back to me here and I'll check it again. Unfortunately, as soon as he handed that cash back, the 3 of them jumped in the car and drove off with his car and his cash. So yeah, that's a bit of a scary one. So massive thanks to everyone for sending those in. Everyone really enjoyed the last couple of videos. If you've enjoyed this video, do comment down below and let me know, and we can do it again, because I've got loads of other ones I wasn't able to go through in this one. If you've got your own stories, also bung them down below, and then we'll see if we can get another video put together. Comment down below on which was your favourite story from all of those. Let us know, because then we can send the person that sent it in a Chops Garage t-shirt. We'll start doing that for the most popular story that's sent in. So yeah, get them across. As always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you again soon. Just a final quick reminder, everyone, to make sure you're getting all the discounts you should do when you're shopping online. Get into the description down below and download Pouch. It's 100% free, it's super easy to use, so there's no reason not to. And again, I'd like to thank Pouch for being a continued sponsor of Chops Garage.